Alright, so in an alternate universe called Heaven, once a year the demon population in the afterlife sees a surge in growth and their numbers must be culled lest they overrun Heaven and its inhabitants. Unfortunately, divine beings aren't exactly suited for tasks that require an aggressive approach, and in almost every form of media, literature, and religious texts, God rarely, if ever, deals with these things personally. So in the spirit of upholding roundabout religious doctrine, Heaven created the 10 Days of Judgment. A competition in which one lucky sinner may escape their hellish punishment by executing the Lord's fury on demons audacious enough to invade his domain. And this is where neons come in. Neons are damned souls corrupted by sin who have been plucked from the underworld to partake in the 10 Days of Judgment. At the end of 10 days, all neons are sent back to the underworld, while the neon that has performed the best is rewarded by securing their place in heaven, at least until next year when the demon population grows and the 10 Days of Judgment begin anew. You take on the role of the eponymous Neon White, a professional hitman in his past life. His occupation afforded him all the accolades and advantages one would expect a trained killer would have. A lethal skill set, a short life expectancy, and amnesia, a common side effect of death it would seem. With White's fate in your hands, you must shoot, slice, and speedrun your way to the top of the competition while uncovering the truth behind not only your forgotten memories, but also the truth behind the 10 Days of Judgment. I've had Neon White on my crosshairs for the longest time ever since one of the boys from 206 brought it to my attention. I've had a bit of a taste with the timed demo that came out in February of this year, and now that I have the full thing in my hands, the game is everything I imagined it would be and more. The perfect combination of style, speed, and substance that pushes all the right buttons for my Skinnerbox-wired brain. Developed by Angel Matrix, aka Ben Esposito, aka one of the members from the hacker group known as 4chan, aka one of the members from the hacker group Arcane Kids who infiltrated the Sega Vault and then restored and leaked the unfinished Sonic games known as Sonic Dream Collections. Truly, only a person who so elegantly brought to life the beauty of the Sonic fandom and its peculiarities could make a game as brilliant as Neon White.
No. Why didn't you play this?
There was never a doubt in my mind that Mr. Esposito could go from here to there because Neon White is all about going fast. And boy howdy, do you gotta go fast. Like his son before their arrival in Bethlehem, the path of redemption begins not on Earth, but in Heaven. In your case specifically, Central Heaven. Central Heaven is the hub world where Heaven's inhabitants, permanent or temporary, congregate to. This is going to become a quickly familiar sight as it is where you will depart from and return to in every episode of the game. From here, you can attend daily sermons, interact with the other residents, sample some of the delights Heaven has to offer, and, most importantly, acquire your missions from Heaven Central Authority. Heaven Central Authority is where the NSS, or the Neon Spiritual Services, is housed. The NSS is the governing body that deals with the logistical aspects of the 10 Days of Judgment. Led by the angels Gabby the Secretary and ProZD, they are responsible for tasking Neons to the various areas in Heaven which have been assigned for demonic cleansing. Once assigned a location, unless you have any further business within Central Heaven for the day, you'd proceed onward to Heaven's Gate and depart on your mission. Every mission takes place in a particular district of Heaven which is separated into several stages. Each stage is an obstacle course of demons you must eliminate and platforming you need to navigate as you race to the end as fast as humanly possible. At the end of every stage, once you've cleared all the pitfalls and banished every demon in the immediate vicinity, you are awarded a medal based on your completion time. In order from lowest to highest, the medals are Bronze, Silver, Gold, Ace, and a special red Developer Medal for beating the developer's time. Your medal ranking also coincides with your insight for the stage, which is just a fancy way of referring to your rewards. The better your medal, the more you'll be awarded. You can increase your Neon rank, you can unlock hidden goodies for that particular stage, like a ghost that replays your best time. You can unlock hints that reveal alternative pathing for a quicker completion time. You can unlock and collect gifts you can use to increase your social standing with your fellow Neons back at Central Heaven. With so many things tied to your completion time, it behooves one to get their butt in gear when they play through a stage. And in order to consistently get quick completion times, you need to understand the intricacies of your control over White. I've heard it said that this game's movement reminds people of the movement in TF2, or really any game that uses a source engine, like TF2. And though the resemblance is certainly there, in my opinion a more apt comparison would be Siam, Speedrunners from Hell. Players familiar with the inner workings of the Source engine have learned to exploit the physics system to attain normally considered impossible speeds. Siam and Neon White are designed with the goal of speedrunning in mind, and since it's been accounted for, it can be controlled by the developers. Thus, your success in this game is primarily determined by working within the game's rules. That isn't to say you can't bend them to some degree, but unless a cracked out speedrunner proves otherwise, you're probably not going to be doing stuff like this. Controlling White is pretty simple. You have your basic movement, you have soul cards, and you have the environment. Movement is as basic as it gets in Neon White. You can move in any direction, and you have a floaty jump. You have the same freedom of movement when you're airborne, you just happen to be slowly hovering downwards. You can move in any direction, and stop on a dime. You can also air strafe simply by holding W and adjusting your facing. But you're not building or preserving speed like in other games. There's just no function working against your movement when you're airborne beyond gravity's tenuous hold on you. The more dynamic forms of movement are primarily attached to soul cards. Soul cards are the arsenal of divine weapons you can find floating around all over heaven. The anatomy of a soul card is split into two parts: weapon and discard ability. Discard abilities are, as the name implies, secondary functions that activate upon discarding your currently equipped card. The manifestation of the soul card's ability is straightforward, but the effect they have on White and his surroundings can range from simple to destructive. They're great for clearing pitfalls, soaring through the air, and smashing through obstacles and demons alike. Alongside soul cards, the environment of heaven also has a palpable effect on your movement. This manifests in the form of water, explosive barrels, and the demons themselves. Despite the emphasis the game places on soul cards, the very first movement mechanic you encounter is water. Whenever you make contact with a body of water, rather than submerge, you'll find that it is a stable surface for White to stand on. Not only is it stable, but it has the added benefit of significantly increasing your movement speed. I don't think there is ever an in-game explanation or even an acknowledgement of the effect water has on you, and if there is, I completely missed it. I consulted the instruction manual and all I could find was something about some such figure walking on water, but other than that, nothing else. Parables and tutorials aside, what's important is that the times when water is available, you'd be wise to take advantage of it. The other object that affects your movement is explosive barrels. When a barrel is damaged by your weapons or abilities, the resulting explosion will propel you upwards while simultaneously disintegrating any demon within the blast radius. Conveniently enough, the explosion only displaces you, it does not damage you. Demons are the final component of the environment. What you'd expect to be obstacles at first glance are actually another aspect of the stage you can manipulate to propel yourself ever faster forward. Some demons are capable of influencing your movement inherently. Other demons will drop a soul card you can collect once you've destroyed them. When you combine your offensive movement options with the card drop mechanic, you can speed along the obstacle course by chaining discard abilities together like this. Despite how flashy everything looks, we're really only using the basic components of Neon White's movement system. Things quickly get complicated once we start taking into account the physics engine. It's not quite as extensive as Source, but enough of the concepts are accounted for. Gravity, acceleration, speed, momentum, force, etc, etc, etc are all present, but they have a specificity to them that takes some getting used to. Acceleration is practically instantaneous in all things and has a fairly strict limit. Deceleration works much the same way. Unless there is a constant impetus acting on White, then you come to a halt as fast as you reach your top speed when in motion. This facet of physics applies to all of the aforementioned components of Neon White's movement system. This means that your tools to navigate a stage are consistent and linear. So linear that you could argue they feel limiting, almost. Momentum is the only way you can manipulate and bend the rules around your speed limit. The issue is that the window of time that your momentum is preserved and can be effectively utilized is fairly short. The simplest and clearest way for me to demonstrate this is with the help of the game's resident sadist, Neon Violet, and her side quests. Case in point, a single barrel will propel you upwards and safely onto the platform, while 3 barrels will splatter you onto the ceiling. So there's a cumulative effect on speed and momentum. Whether it's progressive, exponential, or a flat rate that stacks, I couldn't tell you. Alright, so what about the interactions between cards and environmental objects? To answer that question definitively, we need to go to episode 5, stage 9, arcs. I'm sure the intended way to go through this your first time looks something like this. Now let's run that back, and this time pay special attention to when I discard elevate. I generate enough speed to clear the second pitfall on my way up. Notice that if I delay my usage of elevate, I cannot clear the second pitfall. You may or may not know this, but the top of these waterfalls is treated as something you can stand on, granting you the same benefits any body of water normally would. What one would assume is heavenly decor is actually a key part of the course, preserving some of your speed, even if only for a moment. This complicated interaction for the one obstacle is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the movement system in Neon White. The world can affect you, soul cards affect you. The world can affect your cards and vice versa. Cards can affect themselves and each other, and so on and so forth. I could go on and on about the game's physics and movement, but this isn't meant to be a comprehensive guide. And part of the fun is figuring out all of these nuances and the practical implications they have on your completion time. When you examine the individual components of Neon White's movement in a vacuum, you'll notice that the majority of your tools are so strict in their linearity to the point that it feels limiting. This, in combination with your inherently floaty movement, would probably leave a seasoned speedrunner wanting something more freeform. But when you combine everything together, the specificity and consistency of all of your tools allow you to meticulously plan for every aspect of your route. This means a fast completion time was not stumbled upon. It was designed.
I just keep getting better and better.
There are two halves to Neon White. On one hand, you have a charming visual novel following the story of a resurrected hitman as he tries to rediscover his forgotten memories and uncover the surreptitious truth behind the 10 Days of Judgment, hoping that in that mystery he will also discover an opportunity to repent for the sins he committed when he was alive. On the other hand, you have a series of obstacle courses to complete that intensify in complexity and construction, urging you to propel yourself faster and faster. The gameplay loop of Neon White is easily recognizable, but that doesn't make it any less entertaining or effective at sucking you in. This is a game that knows precisely what it is about and what kind of experience it is trying to deliver. The entirety of the game is built as an episodic structure. Every episode begins with you being given an opportunity to socialize with the inhabitants of Central Heaven before being sent out to clear a district of demonic infestation. Most missions are comprised of 10 stages. Though it's perfectly fine for you to give the mission a good once-over, Neon White lends itself to a completionist/speedrunner playstyle. To some degree, this mindset is mandatory because your Neon rank determines whether or not you're allowed to progress onward to the next series of missions. There's no need to worry, however, if you're not the most mechanically inclined. On average, you only need to get a gold ace time on half of the missions. But that's the only leniency the game will give you in terms of difficulty. There is nothing else you can do other than improve. Let's call this game for what it is. This is a game for speedrunners.
It's like how you can never be a true gamer if you only ever play on easy mode.
To be more precise, this is a game designed to introduce people to speedrunning. So even if you don't have the same level of expertise as speedrunners, the game has a way of developing that instinct for you. The built-in developer hints reveal alternative routes that are always faster than what your preconceptions expect you to do the first time around. But not only are they faster, they also get you thinking about what else could be possible when it comes to routing. Combine that with the game's addictive feedback loop and you have a perfect environment designed to develop the skills speedrunners use all the time. Whether it's the inherent desire to go fast or a competitive nature driving you to climb the leaderboards, once you're in, you're in. Your brain starts to expand, your mechanics begin to develop, your routing becomes more optimal. Layer after layer, you begin to peel away at this game's design as you get better and better. An inverse relationship between time and skill emerges where your mastery manifests as an ever-shrinking completion time. Encouraged by your own progress, you invest hours and hours of your time slowly but surely clawing your way up that leaderboard. The game's Skinnerbox tactics brazenly presented to you. And yet, like all that came before you, and like all that will come after you, you are a rat in a cage, conditioned to pull levers as fast as possible.
I just keep getting better and better.
Speedrunning is a high, and neon white is a gateway drug.
I just keep getting better and better.
Being that this is a game designed to introduce the player to speedrunning, there is a lot that the developers put into the game to make speedrunning, or full completion, as convenient and as appealing as possible. You can spend as much time as you want grinding out any unlocked stage. You can instantly restart the run at any time with the press of a button. Whenever you go out of your way to collect a gift, your run is instantly restarted upon confirmation. If at any point you want to move on from an already completed stage, you can do so from the pause menu. You can revisit any mission you've already accomplished through the archives located at Heaven's Gate to complete anything you left unfinished, or for the simple purpose of attempting to grind out a faster time. With all these conveniences that the game offers, it feels like you're expected to do these optional things. I'm not saying you need to, but it's a fair expectation for the game to have. It helps that the gameplay loop of Neon White is constructed to account for this. For my personal playthrough, every episode played out exactly the same. I would spend an hour or two grinding out a district and completing every aspect of a mission. Once I got back to the central hub, I would go about talking to everyone, giving out gifts, getting new missions, redeeming my tickets, etc, etc, etc. This would occur ad infinitum until the end of the game. And it worked. It was an engaging, simple, and clean gameplay loop that paced itself exceptionally well. You could spend as much time as you want on a district before completing the mission, and once you were back in Central Heaven, you would spend just the right amount of time with the plot and all of Heaven's inhabitants, giving you a welcome breather before the next set of missions. Which is a pleasant surprise because you don't expect a game like Neon White to invest in its narrative elements beyond surface level explanations.
Hey, guess what? You died and God thinks you suck. Go kill some crap?
I know that games similar to Neon White tend to not spend as much time on their story as they do the actual gameplay. Some games within the genre may not even have any kind of a story at all. But the story in Neon White is not only present, it's pretty enjoyable. It successfully bounces back and forth between a light-hearted comical palate cleanser to a familiar but engaging narrative about a man's quest for redemption. The plot has intrigue, it has comedy, it has romance, it has camaraderie. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it can still grab your attention when the writers want you to engage with the plot. For example, this guy here is Neon Green. If you can't immediately tell by his overall menacing aura, he is the antagonist of the game. All White knows, thanks to his amnesia, is that he does not like him. Something within the very fabric of White's being holds an intense anger for Green. Now, juxtapose that with this cutscene, where White and Green can be seen at a cookout as a reward for the two of you being top performers during the 10 Days of Judgment. Keep in mind that the animosity between the two of you still exists at this point. Feel free to use that to calibrate your expectations for the story. And if for any reason it's just not for you, then by all means you are free to completely disregard the story, interacting and engaging with it just enough to expedite your passage into the next series of stages. It's even suggested by Ben himself. But to reiterate, I do like the story. It feels like an abridged experience of an RPG that also features a social link system. It helps that the vocal performances from the cast bring not just the story, but the world to life. From White's endearing awkwardness, to Mikey's grouchy disposition, to the believer's snooty arrogance, to Violet's unhinged sadism, you'd be hard-pressed to find a bad performance from anyone in the cast.
Oh, I can't stop thinking about it, White. Hot flesh ripped from bone, blood painting the landscape a magnificent crimson.
Violet?
I admit that some line readings could be a little campy. But overall, everyone gives a stellar performance in Neon White. Everyone just exudes so much charm and style, which is appropriate considering how much of that can be seen in the surrounding aesthetic of the game. Neon White blends all kinds of visual concepts without those ideas clashing with each other and cluttering your screen. Each district of heaven that you visit features different visual narratives that are pretty to look at and also inform the player what the primary gameplay element of the said district is. Glass Ocean, for example, features a lot of naval imagery and water, and by extension, you should expect to utilize that water as best you can when going for a fast completion time. Lower Heaven, by comparison, is a far more standard manifestation of the Promised Land. A sea of billowy clouds occasionally gently interrupted by tall spires adorned with religious imagery. A traditional rendition of heaven appropriately requires the utilization of traditional FPS gameplay. Where precision and platforming are needed to navigate a level in an older FPS, those same skills are now needed here to attain a quick completion time. All of the districts of heaven are visually distinct, but maintain that ethereal divinity you'd expect a place like heaven to have. Our cast of characters, by comparison, exhibit a secular and grounded charm. The neons, given that their immediate defining feature is a vibrant color, the writers opted to assign a strong personality to complement their design. Yellow is warm and affable, red is passionate and confident, violet is violent, white's a bottom, and so on and so forth. Though a lot of their interactions and by extension the narrative are portrayed through tableaus and text, a lot of personality is expressed by the artwork and these charming emotes and eye catches. I love these things, and I adore that they are prevalent throughout the entirety of Neon White. I'm 100% gonna steal these for videos, by the way. No game about going fast is complete without a killer soundtrack. Neon White was composed by the electronic duo Matt Stephenson and Sean Kelly, aka Machine Girl. The game features varied electronic tracks that encapsulate and reflect the spectrum that is the afterlife. You have songs that capture and express the divine splendor of the more heavenly districts. In Glass Ocean, you can hear Machine Girl utilize vibrant synths that are grounded by this deep, bassy thrum that ensures all of the sounds congeal together. Being that this is set in the Glass Ocean district, the song is appropriately bubbly and upbeat. We go from the simple poppy intro, which then slowly layers on more and more percussive instruments that guide you forward faster. It's encouraging and designed to develop that sense of urgency required to be successful in a speedrunning game. Then you have tracks that complement the unsavory locales of the afterlife. The soundtrack borders on soundscape as this loud, ambient, church organ-like noise fills the air before you're suddenly immersed in glitchy static and piercing rings until finally some sense of clarity for your brain to cling onto emerges from the chaos. Through proficient use of an electronic soundscape, Machine Girl successfully rounds out the world of Neon White by supplementing the narrative and gameplay moments with flair, tenderness, intrigue, uneasiness, and most of all, urgency. I'm feeling a light to solid, this is a game review out of 10. Transition. There are so few issues I personally found with Neon White. Of course, there are some minor things here and there that are annoying, but nothing that disrupts a player's experience with the game. I honestly had to sit down and really think and research the things that detract from Neon White. It took a while, but I did eventually find them. One issue with the game is that there is no text auto-scroll when this game goes from speedrunning to visual novel. A good chunk of this game is voiced, and those cutscenes would flow better if there was an option for automatic scrolling text that works in parallel with the dialogue. And even if they weren't voiced, auto-scroll is a pretty standard thing for text-heavy games to have nowadays, so I'm surprised it's absent in Neon White. Another useful addition would be a built-in replay viewer. It'd be nice to have a single place that gathers all the completed runs of Neons competing on the leaderboards, following in the footsteps of your betters and also potentially building on the concepts they use for their routing. It could also act as early communal cheat detection that the player base could utilize when the validity of some completion times is suspect. Another criticism I have is strange for me to bring up because in any other context, this point would be considered an aspect of speedrunning as opposed to an issue with speedrunning. The only reason I'm even about to mention it is because of this quote from Ben Esposito. Something that I found about speedrunners that should have been obvious but wasn't really until I started having them play the game was that when anything was even slightly random, they just told me they would sit there and do it over and over again until they got the correct thing. So that's something we've been stripping out piece by piece over the development, making sure everything feels completely deterministic. I think that for the vast majority of the game, the developers succeed in removing this particular quirk when it comes to speedrunning, with one notable exception. When you get to the point that you start fighting for literal milliseconds on the leaderboards, the smallest deviation in your route is all it takes for a run to fail. Personally, I had this deviation occur at the start of some stages. I got to the point where if I didn't flick to the correct starting angle in the instant we go from the pause screen to gameplay, I knew that this was going to be a dead run. I would restart over and over again until I felt I got it right, which is the exact thing the developers were trying to avoid. So one way to address this quirk is to borrow a concept from Seum. In Seum, you're frozen in place, but you can freely rotate your character at the start of a level. I think having something like this would significantly reduce the variability when grinding out a stage in Neon White. On the topic of adding in features, I think there should be an option where you don't immediately switch to a card on pickup that you can toggle on and off. Before I go any further with this idea, I 100% concede and acknowledge the fact that the level design of Neon White is primarily constructed around this mechanic. Many ideas and routes fall apart if instead you stayed on your current soul card rather than swap to the new one. However, as I got better at planning a route, there are definitely times when I wish that I didn't have to press the extra keystroke to switch my soul cards for that moment. But honestly, you can take it or leave it with this particular suggestion. Off the top of my head, there are only like 4 stages where I wish card swapping didn't work the way that it did. All that being said, in the grand scope of the game, those issues that I bring up barely detract from the experience. Because when you have a game that knows exactly what it's trying to convey, what is good is so prominent that you scarcely notice the downsides that are there. The love Neon White has for speedrunning shines so brightly through its gameplay that it illuminates how tightly developed and directed the entire experience is. And, despite its focus on the gameplay, Angel Matrix doesn't let that foregrounding overshadow the secondary elements that add character and charm to Neon White. Ben Esposito can be quoted saying that Neon White is a game made by freaks and for freaks, because we know it's not necessary to combine these two ideas of having rich, interesting lore, and also a speedrunning game that's all about going as fast as possible. Neon White could have easily been a loosely connected series of stages that you just speedrun over and over again. I think the game would have probably been as successful as it is currently if the developers had left it at that. And yet, I can't help but feel that something intangible yet crucial is lost had Angel Matrix opted to not realize this world that Neon White is situated in. Would I have played this game and made this review if Neon White had gone the route of Seum or any of its predecessors? Absolutely! The gameplay is straightforward and fun. The slow but palpable feeling of mastery as obstacle courses turn into time-sensitive playgrounds is incredibly satisfying. The convenience, accessibility, and features attached to speedrunning make for a near endless amount of addicting gameplay you can go through. But I don't think I would have invested as much time as I did if Neon White didn't have fun characters, a killer soundtrack, a colorful and stylish rendition of a divine locale, and a redemption arc to supplement the core experience. This is an easy recommendation from me whether Neon White is at a discount or full price. I especially recommend it for anyone invested in speedrunning, whether you have a passing interest or are wired to get as best a time as possible. And even if you don't have any interest in speedrunning, this is just a fun game that taps into the inherent need for speed, successfully translating the sense of urgency into a visceral sensation of going fast. I sincerely hope that we get some kind of addition for Neon White. Whether it's in the form of DLC or a sequel, I just want an expansion of sorts for the game. In the same way that people of faith are certain that their belief will be rewarded, I can't help but feel a similar kind of certainty that this isn't the last we'll see of Neon White.
Not bad for a dead guy, huh?
Thanks again for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. While you're at it, go ahead and check me out on other platforms, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon. Since you're here, check out some of my other reviews. They're every bit as good as the one you just watched. But that's going to be it from me for now, so until next time, bye!